Bible prophecy is active and unfolding daily. Zechariah 12, Isaiah 17, Psalm 83, Ezekiel 38. Here is what the LameStream Media is not telling you.
Shalom, my friends. Welcome to this week's newscast. From BBC News, a single attacker drove a car over the sidewalk along the Westminster Bridge near the Houses of Parliament in central London last week on Wednesday, killing 2 pedestrians and injuring many more. The attacker then ran toward Parliament, where he stabbed and killed an unarmed police officer before being shot dead by armed officers. Acting Deputy Police Commissioner Mark Rowley said the working assumption was that the attacker was, quote, inspired by international terrorism and Islamist-related terrorism, close quote. The UK's threat level has been set at severe, meaning an attack is highly likely for some time. From Reuters, terrorists are increasingly turning to vehicle ramming attacks. The tactic of mowing people down avoids the need to obtain explosives or weapons and can be carried out by a lone attacker. From the Associated Press, Newsday, Israeli police arrested a 19-year-old Jewish boy on Thursday who holds dual Israeli and American citizenship. They said he was the main suspect in a wave of bomb threats against Jewish community centers in the United States, appearing to crack a case that has sent a chill through the American Jewish community recently. Israeli police described the suspect as a hacker, quote, the guy who was behind the JCC threats, close quote. The man is also suspected of placing threatening phone calls within Israel as well as to Australia and New Zealand. Police also said he had disrupted a Delta Airlines flight at New York's JFK Airport in 2015. Turning to my personal thoughts, Stephen Ben-DeNoon has more than 125,000 subscribers on his YouTube channel titled Israeli News Live. You can visit his channel by going to youtube.com/Ben-DeNoon. And I've watched him a time or two, but to be honest, my friends, I very rarely spend any time surfing the web or watching any YouTube videos. That being said, last week I bumped into a video Stephen put together and was fully surprised to see him reading from a parallel English-Hebrew Bible and reading the Hebrew text as fluently as the English. Wow, I sure wish I could do that. I mean, it would make my job so much easier. But when I saw him expounding on how improper some of the English wording was, and explaining what the original Hebrew was saying, I was almost in shock. You mean I'm not the only one doing this? Well, as it turned out, I was watching a video he has on a different YouTube channel of his called Ben-DeNoon Institute. And I'll have a link to that for you beneath today's newscast if you want to check it out, along with a link to the video that shows Stephen doing what I mentioned. Now, I'll be looking into Stephen's work on his Ben-DeNoon Institute channel with greater interest as I find the time. The important thing that I want to convey here, my friends, is how important it is if anyone really wants to understand what the Bible says, to question important words in the English interpretations, descriptive words like grace and faith. English. To see if these English words actually convey what the Father intends for us to understand in His Word. Because very often, and certainly in the case of grace or faith, these words do not deliver any understanding of what the Father wants for us to understand. And that's the primary focus of my Thursday word study videos. If you aren't joining me on Thursdays, I hope you'll grab some friends and do so with serious intent. Turning to wars and rumors of wars, on Sunday, March 19th, from Israel Hayom, Yasser al-Sayed, who commanded Iranian-backed Druze and Palestinian militias loyal to Bashar Assad, was killed last week on Sunday the 19th in an alleged Israeli drone strike while traveling in a vehicle in the Syrian Golan Heights. According to media reports, al-Sayed recently had been in contact with senior members of Iran's IRGC and was planning and trying to carry out terrorist attacks against Israel with Iranian support. From the Long War Journal, the Israel Air Force carried out 2 strikes against the Assad regime and Hezbollah targets in Syria last week on Sunday the 19th and Monday the 20th. Israeli Defense Minister Avigdor Lieberman stressed on Sunday that Israel was, quote, neither for nor against Syrian President Bashar al-Assad, close quote, and had no desire for friction with the Russians in Syria. Israel's main problem is the transfer of game-changing weapons from Syria to Lebanon, which would reach Hezbollah. Therefore, quote, every time we identify such a transfer, we will act to destroy these equilibrium-breaking weapons. There will be no compromise, close quote. Then on Wednesday, March 22nd, from the Times of Israel, Israeli jets were reported to have carried out airstrikes near the Syrian capital of Damascus early on Wednesday, hours after Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu vowed to continue hitting weapons convoys and rebuffed claims Russia had ordered the strikes halted. Syrian opposition news outlets reported that the airstrikes took place in the Mount Qassioun region near Damascus overnight. Then from the New York Times, 10 Egyptian soldiers and 15 ISIS militants were killed during a raid on an Islamist insurgent base in central Sinai. The Egyptian soldiers died in 2 roadside blasts. Turning to our Intifada update, on Thursday, March 23rd, from Ynet News, a Palestinian was killed and 3 wounded after several Palestinians approached the Israeli community of Beit El in the West Bank and hurled firebombs at IDF troops, prompting them to return fire. And on Monday, March 27th, from Ynet News, a Palestinian terrorist tried to stab a soldier with a screwdriver at a bus stop in the Nablus area of the West Bank. IDF troops overpowered the attacker without opening fire. And now looking at our review of last week's news, terrorists are increasingly turning to vehicle ramming attacks. A single attacker drove a car over the sidewalk along the Westminster Bridge near the Houses of Parliament in central London, killing 2 pedestrians and injuring many more. Israeli police arrested a 19-year-old Jewish boy who holds dual Israeli and American citizenship, the main suspect in the recent wave of bomb threats against Jewish community centers in the United States. Yasser al-Sayed, who commanded Iranian-backed Druze and Palestinian militias loyal to Bashar Assad, was killed in an Israeli drone strike. The Israel Air Force carried out 2 strikes against the Assad regime and Hezbollah targets in Syria. Israeli jets carried out airstrikes near the Syrian capital, Damascus. 10 Egyptian soldiers and 15 ISIS militants were killed during a raid on an Islamist insurgent base in central Sinai. A Palestinian was killed and 3 others were wounded after several Palestinians hurled firebombs at IDF troops in the West Bank. And a Palestinian terrorist tried to stab a soldier with a screwdriver at a bus stop in the West Bank. And that, my friends, is what the LameStream Media is not telling you. Abba willing, I'll see you here again next week. Until then, stay safe. Shalom.
Crowded rooms, I need more space than I consume. Enough is time alone with you, underneath a naked moon, sharing confidential moods and making chatter. Mockingbird nocturnal sings notations of eternal things, entering the quantum breeze, flying not for want of wings. He lights his gaze on you and me, simply because we matter.